Homage to the Buddha, the Dhamma and the Saṅgā. Now that we've looked at all four nutriments and how to meditate on each one individually, we're now going to learn how to do a short meditation bringing all four nutriments together by looking at the Four Nutriments Suffering. So what is this meditation on Four Nutriments Suffering? Well, if you've been following along, you know that we've been looking at these four unprofitable directions and we've done a deep dive into each of the nutriments. So we've done a deep dive into the physical nutriment, kapalinkara, āhāraṭṭhitikā, and we've seen how it's driven very much by sensual desire and that consciousness keeps coming back to the form, the rupa. We've looked at contact as nutriment, so pasahara, and we've seen that that's driven largely by existence, and that consciousness keeps coming back to the feeling, the vedana. And when it comes to mental volition as nutriment, we've seen that it's largely driven by views, wrong views, and this is very much the consciousness coming back to perception, so the saññā. And with consciousness as nutriment, we've seen that this is largely driven by ignorance, and we keep coming back to volitional formations. And the perversions that are driving all of this is the perversion that we see attractive in the unattractive. We see pleasure in what is painful. We keep seeing me and mine, or the self, in what is not me and mine, not self. And we also think that it lasts when it's actually unlasting. So permanency instead of something that is impermanent. So we've been deceived and we've lied to ourselves. And so we crave these four nutriments and keep going the wrong ways. Now what we haven't looked at before is looking at how it works all together. So the meditation that we're going to look at today is straightforward, but it actually shows us how it all works. So it's as simple as saying, how do we suffer through these four nutriments? Now when we've done the deep dive into each of these, we've touched on it. We've actually looked at it. So when it comes to kapalinkara, āhāraṭṭhitikā, the physical nutriment, we always experience pain. When it comes to contact as nutriment, we always get to the sadness. We can't fix it, so there is sadness. With mental volition as nutriment, we always get to the sorrow, because when we take something as me and mine, we have a very strong view to that. Whenever there is a perception around it, we become quite sorrowful, that sinking feeling. And then when it comes to consciousness as nutriment, due to the ignorance, due to these sankharas, the volitional formations, our constructions, they're always shattering. So we lament. And so we actually looked at this. So we're going to use that to see how it links together. Now, if you remember the swinging monkey analogy that we looked at, particularly we saw that slide in the mental volition as nutriment, but it can be applied to all four nutriments. What happens is when vijnana, consciousness, wants to steady somewhere, it swings. So 1 minute it's holding to form, the next minute it's holding to feeling, the next minute it's holding to perception, the next moment it's holding to volitional formations, and it keeps swinging. That's how consciousness activates the paticca samuppada, the dependent origination. It just keeps swinging and rests somewhere in order for the dependent origination to kick off. So that's something to bear in mind when you're doing this meditation, that what's happening is this monkey is swinging along and it keeps reconstructing through each of the steadying points. So how do we do this meditation? Well, when we take the physical nutriment, say we pass away and we think, if I'm reborn because I want to see something or taste something or do something, and I can get the pleasure from being born, then you go into the mother's womb and you are reborn, expecting sukha. But the problem is that what you experience the minute that you are born, or even the minute that you go into the mother's womb, is dukkha. There is already dukkha. But particularly when you are born, you realize, oh no, I'm now subject to aging, sickness and death. So what I thought was sukha, it is either limited, fleeting, or subject to change. So immediately that's where you see the dukkha. Now what happens from that mental pain? is every time you try and fix it, you get to the sadness. So every time you try and fix, we know this, it's either fleeting, subject to change, or it slides. And so you get that domanassa feeling, the sadness. And you realize you can't fix it. So when that happens, you've taken something as me and mine, and you have a very strong view that you can still fix it. So what happens is you look out into the world, a bit like an amusement park, and you go, maybe I can go and sample something over here. Those people look like they're having fun. So you get this perception that comes from the sad feeling, searching out in the world for something that's going to fix it. So the perceptions where you end up is sorrow, because what you find out is that it's not true. But even then, because what you feel, you perceive. So when you get to these sorrowful perception, that result of those perceptions, there's a sickness. But when you try and reconstruct, it's built on the sorrowful nature of perceptions. And so what happens is every time your construction through consciousness tries to construct, we know that it is shattering. There's a dying in what happens. We don't get what we want. You end up lamenting. So we saw that when we looked at our daily life, that we get hit with spears every time something doesn't go our way. And so we lament, why did it happen? Why did the alarm go off? Why did I miss the bus? Why is this person having an argument with me? Why is someone bothering me? All these different things that we thought it was going to be good. We even thought we could tolerate it, whatever it is that is happening in our lives. But we end up in lamentation. So that is essentially the meditation, that with the physical nutriment you come to pain. When you have contact as nutriment, you come to sadness. With mental volition as nutriment, you come to the sorrow. With consciousness as nutriment, you come to the lamentation. So it's driven by the form, the feeling, the perception, and the volitional formations. So it's good to take an example in your meditation. So you can see that the steps are not really that difficult. There's only really 8 Dhamma parts to it. So we take an example. So let's say that we are born, and we can admit that once we are born, due to aging, sickness, and death, we know there is mental pain. Just the understanding of that. So that's 2 parts. So when you come to trying to fix it, say for example, we try and fix it through our jobs. So we think through the job we can earn money, and through the money we can afford, good things. But say we hear that our job is in jeopardy. So we haven't lost our job yet, but our job could be in jeopardy. They announce a retrenchment program, and you're not sure whether you're part of that retrenchment program. So immediately what happens? You worry, but you definitely get sad. You think, what if I lose my job? What if I'm on the list? And you worry about, I'm going to lose my income, that which enables me to look after my family and buy anything that I want. So from that sad feeling, you start to perceive things. So you look at your fellow co-workers with that sad feeling. You contemplate your job, the company name, and you think, you perceive it from that sad feeling. And you have a very strong view about me and mine. So when it comes to mental volition as nutriment, what's feeding it now is me and my job. Me and my colleagues are now in competition. Me and my company are no longer cool. There is the potential to lose my job. So it's driven by these views. And so you end up in sorrow. So that is the sickness that is pervading the mind at the moment. And so when it comes to consciousness as nutriment, out of ignorance, you start to think all these views about the job, all these kind of ignorant thoughts about your colleagues. Maybe you start to compete in your mind with them. I'm better than them. But I'm not so good at this. What can I do? What can I do? Every single time the mind is contacting the company and the job and your colleagues, there is dukkha. You start to lament in your mind. What will I do if I have to find another job? What will I do if something happens to me? What will I do if I have to face my colleagues? What will I have to do if I have to face my family and tell them that I'm losing my job? So you basically see through an example how this happens. Now, you don't have to take that example, but you can take the example of a relationship with someone where you disagree. You can take an example of something's happened to a material object. You can take many different examples with this, but you get the gist of it, that at each and every turn when it comes to this construction, when we crave through these nutriments, and it doesn't have to be extreme craving, it can be something just to make our life function, how we exist in this world. You can see how we suffer. And so this meditation is really being able to look at these Dhamma objects and be able to actually see that through these four nutriments there is actually dukkha. We can also use the current situation with COVID that's happening around the world to apply this meditation as well. So the first one is still quite straightforward. When you birth this body, you immediately experience the mental pain because you know you are subject to aging, sickness and death. And in this particular example, the sickness is the one that really troubles us. So we have the mental pain of knowing that a lot of people around the world are getting sick. And so when it comes to making contact, when you make contact with the news and everything, it's already challenging the fact that you think you can fix it with sukha. At the moment, it's very difficult to fix anything with sensual pleasures because you can't go out in some cases. You're stuck at home. You can't even go to work. You may have to work from home. You can't go out to enjoy yourself. And so it's very limited. So already most of us are abiding in sadness. Now, as we know, there is already sadness from having birthed the body, but there is additional sadness from having to bear with these conditions, always being with the dukkha. So every time we turn on the news, it's about COVID, it's cases and deaths. Every time we listen to people debating, it's about, oh, should we have the vaccine? Which vaccine? Is this one good? Is that one not good? And you have different people with different views, and so every time you have to listen to it, it's quite difficult. Or there are associated things. Are they going to have mandates? Do we need vaccine passes? So every time you make contact in the world right now, it is sadness. So when you have this feeling, everything you perceive comes from that lens. And so when you look out into the world looking for, again, always how to fix it and always how to interpret what is going on, it's from that sense of me and mine. So what we perceive is from that really strong sense of me and mine. My body, my choice, what is happening to me and my job, me and my views about the COVID situation, me and my views about what is happening to my loved ones, and all those sorts of things. So when it comes to understanding even how people debate about vaccines, how they debate about conspiracy theories, narratives about what is going on, it's always going into very, very strong views. And so if you notice after watching television, whether it's your preferred channel or not, but definitely when it's not your preferred channel, you end up quite sorrowful because you may disagree. And even when you agree with what is being said on the news, you feel quite sorrowful about all the sickness that is in the world. You always feel quite sorrowful when you get into arguments with people over what is right and wrong about this. And there is a lot of fear that comes from it, which is being permeated in the world. So you're also very sorrowful about that. So we are not with what is pleasing to us. We are separated from what is pleasing. We are united with what is not pleasing. So this is what's happening during this COVID situation. So when it comes to the fourth unprofitable direction, where we get to is lots of lamenting. It's lamentation in our minds because what keeps shattering is when people don't agree with us about our strong views, when we don't get what we want in terms of our freedoms, when we can't go back to the way it was before, everything has changed. It keeps shattering for us no matter how we try and reconstruct, whether we're locked down or we're not locked down, the fact that the rest of the world is experiencing various or varying degrees of freedoms, and we can see the whole world moving through a lot of change and a lot of dukkha, you lament. And so most of the conversations we have with people at the moment is driven by lamentation. Why is this happening? Why can't we go back to the way we are? Why do we have to have the new normal? What is this thing about vaccine passes? How dare they do this or that? It shouldn't be this way. We can see that we are going through the swinging monkey: form, feeling, perception, volitional formations. It keeps swinging over and over again. And so this is also another way of looking at the Dhamma paths. And for each person it may be a different way of looking at it, unique to your situation and the views and opinions that you have, and how you deal with it, how much you lament or don't lament. But it's pretty powerful what's happening right now. So when you start to see this, you really realize actually what's most important out of this meditation is that you don't want to fall for these things. Now, what is happening in the world will happen, irrespective of whether you engage with it. But in the meditation, what you want to see is that you can't actually fix what is going on. And when you know that, you realize you want to remove contact, otherwise you continually suffer. It's evident when you look at this meditation that when you perceive, when you go with the feeling, when you don't tolerate what is going on and you keep being driven by ignorance and delusion, you will continually suffer. And so the person that is able to meditate on this is able to retract and to know, if I don't make so much contact through these nutriments, particularly don't make contact with the physical nutriment. So for example, you turn off the TV when it comes to this particular example. You don't get into debates with people about what's going on with COVID. There's more peace. The sattā, the peacefulness, the samadhi, the concentration that you can get, the gladness in the mind that you can get from understanding this Dhamma is very good. And so when you can see through your example in this meditation, one can accept, one can bear with, because one birthed this body, this is what one can expect from the four nutriments. And so you're really teaching yourself to see directly, not to be deceived by these four nutriments. We can share the merit with all sentient beings. May all beings be happy and well. May all beings be free from suffering. Blessings of the Triple Gem. Wishing you all well. Teruan Saranai.